The last time we sat down to talk history, I was a little hesitant to get into the Civil War with the third RimWorlds Republic video. However, cyberbullying and threats to send me urban mechs to paint have convinced me to give it a go with the mech frog twist on it. I hope you enjoy. Foundation. When we left off, a child by the name of Stefan Amaris was born into a family that was known for their strong leadership and inability to transfer power peacefully. To say there were some family drama incidents would be putting it lightly. Gordon Belantre might have put it most succinctly in his History of the Amaris family when he wrote, "The universal scholar would be hard-pressed to find a worse collection of self-involved, sadistic tyrants than those of House Amaris. Not only did they damn themselves by their collective hatred of humanity, but by their actions they damned us as well." The fact that Stefan Amaris made it to adulthood in the increasingly chaotic and dangerous life within RimWorlds Republic politics is a testament to his intelligence, savvy, and perhaps willingness to be even more bloodthirsty than anyone who might get in his way. However, growing up without being able to really trust anyone had to have a negative impact on his psyche. Perhaps that played a part in the rest of his story. This paranoia and constant palace intrigue was the natural outcome of more than 500 years of political machinations within the periphery to protect the little dictatorship from the rest of the inner sphere. Now, under a seemingly permanent occupation of the Star League, Stefan Amaris would need to navigate the traditional tendency to rebel against outside control in an environment where the RimWorlds were seemingly helpless to do anything about it. The 28th century promised what could easily be described as a golden age for humanity under the leadership of Simon Cameron, the fourth First Lord of the Star League. However, opportunities were not uniform across the stars. In the formerly independent states of the periphery, many people equated the Star League with occupation and taxation without much in return. In the RimWorlds Republic, House Amaris ruled with a brutality that nominally pleased the Star League because it meant the RimWorlds were one of the more docile states. This of course worked out in the favor of Stefan Amaris, who was able to operate under less scrutiny. From the outside, the Amaris family was seen as one of the most loyal of the periphery ruling families. Stefan Amaris understood that directly challenging the SLDF was pointless, so more indirect means to undermine the system were required. An educational movement spread across the RimWorld's planets where young people were encouraged to enter public service, particularly within the Star League bureaucracy. These were seen by House Amaris as seeds that could eventually grow and bear fruit someday, either through subterfuge, intelligence gathering, or outright sabotage. The Star League propaganda across the periphery worlds was substantial. In schools, students opened each day with a pledge of allegiance to the Star League, and then another just for House Cameron. Later in the morning, students were asked to take 5 minutes to meditate and reflect upon all the benefits that membership in the Star League had brought them. At lunch, there was a communal prayer thanks to the First Lord for the bountiful harvest that provided the food in front of the students. And then finally, after a long day of showering the Star League with praise and reverence, there was one final act required before the end of the school day. Turning toward Terra, students were told to offer thanks to the Star League for the guidance that allowed for another successful day of learning. If this sounds a little bit like 20th and 21st century North Korea, congratulations on your historical scholarship and pattern recognition. By the time Stefan Amaris was holding the reins of power, private ownership of land was abolished and the Amaris administrative state firmly held control of most of the daily lives of your average RimWorld citizen. Wages, access to food, media, and entry into advanced education were all controlled by the state and could be removed if someone or a group of people started to cause problems. This was one of the primary ways that the RimWorlds Republic prevented rebellious behavior that the other periphery states continued to face during the Golden Century following the Reunification War. When Simon Cameron unexpectedly died in February of 2751, the leadership of the Star League was significantly weakened. His son, Richard, was only 8 years old at the time, and even though he was quickly proclaimed the new First Lord, the true power would have to be kept in the hands of the Star League Council until the boy was old enough to take charge. This was a significant problem, as many on the council were thoroughly preoccupied by the internal issues of their own houses. Often the council meetings were only sparsely attended, which resulted in many of the functions of the Star League bureaucracy falling even further down the chain, muddying the waters and legitimacy of the government. The control over the people of the RimWorlds Republic by the Amaris government bureaucracy was so effective that Stefan Amaris felt confident to take advantage of the appointment of Richard Cameron. As we know from our previous discussion of the periphery states, bad things tend to happen to your power base when you're away from home, so it's a testament to how much power and control Stefan Amaris had that he felt confident enough to leave for 5 years to go play mentor to the young Cameron on Terra. We won't go into too much detail concerning Amaris' manipulation of the young First Lord, however the consequences of it would end up impacting the RimWorld citizenry in a world-shattering way. Stefan Amaris used all of the skills and experiences he had learned growing up in House Amaris to turn Richard Cameron into a paranoid and petulant teenager who could be manipulated and controlled, while pushing other people away like Alexander Kerensky and the Star League Council, who might have been able to intervene. Culmination. What became known as the birthday party proclamations stunned the Star League Council lords to the point that they really didn't have the ground under their feet to mount a substantive opposition to them. Cameron making Stefan Amaris a Knight of the Star League was widely seen as outrageously inappropriate. After all, Amaris was from the uncultured and unreliable periphery. How could he possibly uphold the ideals of the Star League? Adding insult to injury, or injury to insult, the proclamations included orders to General Kerensky to remove SLDF units from RimWorld's Republic territory. While the populace of the Inner Sphere was still talking about the Amaris knighthood, a significant power shift was taking place. Richard Cameron specifically ordered Kerensky to abandon the SLDF bases and fortifications to the RimWorld's armed forces, on their way out of RimWorld territory. General Kerensky was stunned by the orders and went so far as to send a message back to Terra stating that he could never submit to an order that required turning over SLDF technology and informational databases to a periphery state. His protest fell on deaf ears, and Kerensky defied the order and began to evacuate SLDF holdings only after destroying everything possible that couldn't be transported back to the Inner Sphere. Unfortunately for Kerensky and the Star League, Fort McHenry was not properly mothballed, and more than half of it was deemed usable by the incoming RimWorld forces. Furthermore, Heverol Aerobase's servers had hard drives that were not properly wiped, so when the base was occupied, a deluge of secret information ended up in the hands of the RimWorld's Republic. Already concealing their true strength of their military assets, the RimWorld's armed forces were now in possession of technology and information that effectively leveled the playing field between them and any of the great houses. With the Star League Council now defunct and Richard Cameron ruling by direct decree, Stefan Amaris pushed his plan forward. The Taxation Edict of 2763 placed fresh taxes on the periphery states in violation of the reunification treaties. One might ask, why would Amaris support higher taxes that would impact his own state? The outrage and revolutionary fervor kicked up by this tax edict hit the other states much more than it impacted the RimWorld's Republic. This was largely due to the administrative state that Amaris had implemented, which could brutally quell any resistance. As rumors of open revolution in other states spread, the RimWorlds appeared to be the model of the loyal Star League state. With fire spreading across the periphery states, the SLDF was spread out across them according to Amaris' plan. With Kerensky busy quelling rebellions, Stefan Amaris was free to enact his coup on Terra. A gifted laser pistol turned on its recipient ended the rule of Richard Cameron, as Stefan Amaris introduced the Cameron family to the kind of bloody transition of power that would both end the Star League and set the norm across the Inner Sphere for generations to come. With the Camerons dead and Amaris claiming the title of First Lord, the major houses of the Inner Sphere were wary of taking any firm position. Each seemed more concerned with their own prospects of claiming the title than actually dealing with Amaris. The job was left to Alexander Kerensky, who began to pull SLDF forces from every corner of the Inner Sphere and periphery to aim directly at Amaris. With the news spreading quickly, Mohammed Salim, who was placed in charge of the RimWorld's Republic in Amaris' absence, proclaimed the death of the First Lord Cameron as a historic day in which the people of the Republic should take pride. His broadcast words described Amaris as a liberator who would take his rightful place as benevolent leader of all of humanity. I've mentioned before that civil wars tend to be particularly brutal and destructive. The psychology of this phenomena is fascinating, and in the case of Amaris versus Kerensky, it held true. The fighting was particularly destructive, and the parties were so embittered and angry by the time Amaris surrendered to Kerensky on Terra that it couldn't have stopped there. The betrayal was seen as personal to many across the Inner Sphere, and that outrage would be focused not just on House Amaris, but also on the people of the RimWorld's Republic, most of which could be argued were really innocent and shared no culpability with the actions of their tyrannical leader. The Lyran Commonwealth acted quickly to annex many of the RimWorld's planets. The remaining worlds were left in economic shambles. The government that had so stridently controlled every aspect of the lives of its citizens was now collapsing, as many had abandoned their positions entirely to avoid being held accountable when the SLDF or Lyran forces showed up. New governments were formed that excluded everyone connected to the Amaris regime, but that only contributed to the chaos as few really understood how things functioned. Mohammed Salim, the man who Amaris chose to run the Republic while he was on Terra, was hunted down and murdered in the middle of the street by an angry mob who blamed him for helping Stefan Amaris for so many years. Consequences. Without any law or order, violence became the currency of power on the planets of the Rimworld's Republic. Local strongmen and warlords rose to power, taking control of cities, continents, and whole planets. Some grew into pirate and bandit kingdoms, while others withered on the vine when jump ship traffic stopped. Starvation and violence was widespread as the Republic slowly collapsed and then faded into unpleasant memories. It was a sad and inglorious ending to what had once been one of the most powerful periphery states. The question of why Stefan Amaris carried out this coup is an interesting one. At least on paper, it doesn't seem like it has a real likely win condition. Staying on Terra to claim the title of First Lord isolated Amaris far from the bulk of his support back in the Rimworlds. As we saw play out, Kerensky's SLDF far outweighed the defense Amaris was able to muster, even with the use of hostages and weapons of mass destruction. I think there might be a hint to why in the story of Gregory Amaris, Stefan Amaris was sure to have been raised on the story of his noble ancestor who was staunchly loyal to the Star League, only to be betrayed by the Camerons. I think it's certainly possible that this generational grudge could have impacted Amaris' decision to take the opportunity when he saw it open, even at the risk of losing everything. The actual victims in all of this were the ordinary citizens of both the Star League and the Rimworld's Republic, who were often just caught in the wrong place at the wrong time and were obliterated in droves for it. Some people who had the means to leave left the planets of the former Rimworlds behind for the Inner Sphere, though that would often be a fool's errand, as the Inner Sphere states themselves squabbled over the remains of the Star League and descended into the barbarity of the First Succession War. The discussion of the Rimworld's Republic is one I take little enjoyment in. If anything, it's a demonstration of the continually squandered potential of humanity to move beyond baser instincts and petty squabbles. Stefan Amaris was the result of countless generations of greed, paranoia, and an inability to find common ground. The ultimate victims being people who really had no say in any of it. The consequences are best described in the private journal of SLDF Lieutenant General John Fletcher, when he writes, "Yes, I want Amaris dead and the hegemony freed, but frankly, I'm sick of the petty infighting. Spheroid versus periphery, house versus house, lord versus lord. The Star League was meant to be a grand alliance of humanity, but now it seems more like a sick relative with a cancer at its heart needing to be cut out. One part of me thinks euthanasia would be a better option, putting it out of its misery like a sick dog. But Kerensky believes it can be saved, so I have to have hope. I can't give up. Yet without unity, what hope can there be?" This wraps up our discussion of the Rimworld's Republic. I hope you enjoyed it. Big thanks to you for sticking it out, and to everyone who's been supporting the channel's tremendous growth over the past few months. I appreciate it more than I can express in words. Maybe I should try using fireworks. Anyway, take care. I'll see you next time. Go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.